I'm glad that's working, by the way. That's the new Narativ TV Twitter feed that now has scheduled shows. So we have to start on time. That's the downside. But the upside is the upside is that we get to promote things before the show. But here we are on time on a Friday with the lovely Lincoln's Bible. How are you, LB?
I'm good. I'm just checking to see if everybody made it. It's hard for me too. Tech change.
Tech changing is very hard, but we try.
Very hard.
Greg Olear is here from Prevail. How are you, Greg?
Oh, I'm fine. I had a weird thing happen to me yesterday where I have on my car, I have a lovely Biden-Harris bumper sticker that my friend Joni V made. She made a whole bunch of them. And someone came, my car is parked outside of my house. Someone came and put a Trump bumper sticker over my Biden-Harris bumper sticker.
Wow, that's not very. Yeah. So what did you do?
You're in the bluest of blue. I can't tell if it was like a disaffected MAGA or like some kid trying to be smart ass, but it's the ultimate like, guys, scoreboard. You know, it's too late for your bumper sticker. We won.
So did you get it off the car? Or you just
I didn't even see it. My wife saw it and went to a fury and like tore it off with the fingernails.
Are you sure it wasn't your teenager?
No. He would not have had access. He would not have wasted money on buying a Trump bumper sticker. So
it is a good.
I don't know who it was, but I was like, okay, whatever. So maybe it's a sign that on March 30th, the inauguration is coming.
It's never too late
April
to go MAGA.
Day, yeah.
Hey, Noel Casler, how are you?
I'm well, Zev. Thanks. Thanks for asking.
Did you have any bumper sticker incidents where you are?
No, I'm hoping that they stay on Greg's side of the river.
Yeah.
We have a big river between us. There's a reason I live east of the Hudson River,
Ooh, look at that. Throwing down some shade, I think.
I think there's more Republicans on your side of the river, I'm going to say.
Look, they're all around. That's part of the lesson, They're amongst us. I'm sure on one side of me, there's a guy who ran for president, and on the other side, there's definitely a Trump supporter, Yeah.
Well, we all have to deal with that. Tonight on the show, we've got such interesting things coming up, and it's 7:30. I should point out we have a reporter from the MIT Tech Review, which is a very, very good publication and probably way above our sort of level here. But we're going to, when it comes to technology, but we're going to try understand how Facebook used AI to manipulate and make a lot of us extreme, and how they still do it today, and how it's basically this machine that's running rampant. Mark Zuckerberg will do nothing about it, because if they do something about it, it means cutting back on his growth, and his growth is the most important thing. And by growth, I mean audience growth, not other kinds of growth. But he really wants that growth, and so the only way to do that is to keep the AI extreme, radicalizing people. So she's done a terrific report on this. We're going to find out why it's all happening. And it's quite serious, of course, because it's how we got to the insurrection on January 6th and how we got to Donald Trump as well. So we'll put some pressure on Mark Zuckerberg later on. But I want to start the show with the news about the Justice Department's investigation, the newly rebirthed Justice Department, I should say, an investigation into what happened on January 6th. First things first, Merrick Garland arrived, and almost instantly, things changed in at the Department of Justice. We found out a lot more about what is going on. They seem to be building a conspiracy case against these guys known as the Oath Keepers. The Oath Keepers are a very well-known group of militia members, I would say. You were helping me define them a little bit early on, LB. What would you say about the Oath Keepers?
Oh, well, they're a very serious domestic terror group, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others. Generally, the sort of meaning behind the name is that they took an oath to the country. So it's really had a very strong recruitment outreach into veterans and folks that, in our military who take a military oath, or police officers. So that's their particular brand. So these are very serious people who have been radicalized and are very good at radicalizing others, have quite a bit of their own propaganda, and they as well do a lot of keep up their training. They know how to stage an insurrection. Yeah. That's for sure.
They planned it. They actually had tons of phone calls.
They did. They have comms and everything. They have. They know what they're doing.
And the FBI has all of those now, so they are able to put together a pretty convincing conspiracy case. A case like the one you'd put against a mob figure, like a mob family. You would probably
Imagine that.
Imagine that
it's Rico. I wonder where that came from.
It's so interesting that it's applicable here, right?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So they're going to start at the bottom. They've already started at the bottom. They've been arresting a bunch of them. 13 people are now under arrest. Let me show you the 13th guy. Here he is. He just was arrested today. Kenneth Harrelson. He appeared in court today. He's the 13th Oath Keeper indicted, and he attended dozens of meetings. All of these were online, so they have all these communications, of course, of him preparing for this particular day. And that's him inside the Capitol. I don't know if he's taking a selfie of himself. Not a good look. And it's interesting that the Justice Department has now said, according to at least Jim Sciutto, that the probe into the Capitol attack is likely the largest and most complex criminal investigation in U.S. history, and the number of defendants could pass 400 as prosecutors pour through massive amounts of tips. Now, all of this is interesting. And evidence. Yeah. So this guy is was the head boy of these Oath Keepers. His name is Stuart Rhodes. He worked as a congressional aide. You won't be surprised to whom. He works as a congressional aide to Ron Paul, the father of Rand Paul. So he certainly knew his way around the Capitol when he did what he was doing. He also is referred to by his followers as Person One. I don't know why they refer to him as Person One, but just in case you want them.
Oh my God,
that's his
They're
nickname.
Such dorks. They're such goddamn dorks.
And
it's a translation of Alpha. Okay,
right.
So
it's
everything's coded.
Fucking James Bond. It's okay, number one. What's okay, number two? Number two is a piece of shit. Okay, so that's what I know that from my training.
Right.
So he was on tape saying all sorts of things.
Wait a minute. What's your training? What's your training that you got?
Potty training. Number two. Okay.
Number two. Did anyone else want a number? We've got lots of them. We can give them away. LB, you want a number?
No, I don't want any numbers.
So Person One at the Oath Keepers is also quoted on apparently by in the indictment. He was caught on tape saying civil war is here right now and inciting all sorts of violence. And of course, that's not going to be a good look. Mostly because the Oath Keepers also do another job on the side. They happen to be Roger Stone's security detail. You know, most of the time you see Roger Stone running around with people like this around him. Here we go. You see these guys behind him. These are all Oath Keepers. So you see one of them is wearing a cap with the Oath Keepers label on it. And, you know, there's certainly more evidence of them. Even the New York Times points out that some of these Oath Keepers were photographed before with Roger Stone and then at the actual insurrection right afterwards. It's not a good look for the president's former, not even former, current advisor. And so here we are facing what could be a RICO investigation that could lead us all the way to Roger Stone. Anyone want to talk about that?
That picture is ridiculous. That picture is ridiculous. It looks like a middle school production of like Batman or something, where he's a penguin and he's got the henchman in the back and oh my God, the simulations. I need another. I need a drink.
Does this remind you, Noel, of the bikers for Trump and the security that he doesn't it have that Spetsnaz vibe to it? That whole thing.
It definitely does. And, you know, it's sad to say Roger Stone went to high school about 3 miles from where I'm sitting now in Cross River. He went to John Jay High School way before my time.
Your side of the river or Greg's side of the river?
My side. Oh, wow. So a point in the, a negative on this side of the river,
Yeah,
but John Jay, the leafy Westchester suburbs, and everybody knows who Roger Stone is. The Oath Keepers guy, I remember about a year ago, I was at a meeting on the Upper East Side, sort of for this fellowship thing that I'm involved in. And it's not like an Oath Keeper, it's like a normal kind of thing. And this guy was visiting from Pennsylvania, and he was like working construction because there's a lot of big construction happening on the Upper East Side. And he was wearing an Oath Keeper's cap, and he was otherwise like a mild-mannered white guy in his mid-50s, who was, probably a crane operator or something. And I remember thinking, like, how crazy is it how open this guy is with this thing? Because I knew what the Oath Keepers were, but it was just like the fact that he was advertising it, and he knew he was behind enemy lines. This church we were in was like Jackie O's former church. It wasn't like, it wasn't his place, but he was sort of flaunting it. So I think they were planning this for a while, I don't think they knew they had to attack the Capitol, obviously, until Trump lost. But my point is they started building the army a long time ago. And Roger was a big part of that. And I knew Sam Nunberg, personally in those days. And I think Roger Stone got pardoned for a reason. I think Trump needed to put him back in service. And that's what we saw. Come November and on. It was like Roger was a tactical guy. Roger was probably in the room on January 5th when they had the private meeting at the Trump Hotel and stuff. So Roger would have been like the general of the, Oath Keepers.
Of the Oath Keepers,
Armada or whatever you want to call these guys.
So you would have had like a real, they probably have a really good case against Stone. Other than the fact that he's probably pardoned for everything preemptively. I don't know if he is, but he might be.
He can't be for this.
Oh, he can't be? All right. Oh,
no.
He can't? Okay. So then they've got 13 guys that they're squeezing right now, to use a term that I would never otherwise use, but squeezing them for information on Roger Stone. And then, they're going to get all the information because they basically have it on tape already. One or two of these guys has got to flip. Maybe all 13 will flip. And then what do? You go after Roger's boss. If Roger wants to talk about what Donald Trump did, will Roger throw Donald under the bus? I don't know. But I'm sure Donald was very aware of everything that was going on during the planning stages of his insurrection.
Oh, yeah. I have can I float a theory? I don't know.
Welcome to.
I want to be responsible. So just know that this is my theory. I'm being responsible. I have got a little vodka here with me. It's Friday. My brain is burnt. But from January 6th to January 20th, is enough time to just write up some pardons. So I think everybody should sort of brace for that. And Flynn got a pardon from Trump and we've talked about this before, that was very universal. It actually even had an indication of sort of saying future crimes. And although people go, oh, you can't pardon for future crimes, if those crimes can be connected conspiratorially to other individuals involved in the Russia investigation, i.e. Donald Trump, i.e. Roger Stone, who was also investigated. His lawyers could finagle that. So I think the Flynn pardon is a real problem and a real indicator. And I'm just very curious about, and I would love for him to be hauled in front of the Senate so we can hear from him under oath. But why did Bill Barr quit? Did he quit because Donald said, hey, we're going to do this thing. If it goes violent, I need you to tell me what kind of charges might be coming down for my buddies here, Stone and Flynn and Giuliani and my kid, right? So that we can have these pardons ready. This is my theory. I know nothing. The only thing I know for certain is that Mike Flynn did get this great big broad pardon, because that's out, and we know that. But I just think there's something about Bill Barr leaving.
Oh, he knew.
And I don't.
He knew it was coming.
He knew, but why? But why leave? What was he being asked to do? That's what I'm saying. Is he was asked to do something. I don't think he just witnessed stuff and said, "I'm out." Because look at all the shit he witnessed and he stayed in, right? Something he didn't want to be connected to an act.
Well, he didn't want to be involved. He would get prosecuted potentially.
Right. That's right.
That's what you're saying. He got out of the way so he wouldn't get prosecuted. Sure, he would have known, and that would be the reason to walk away from that. That would be the main reason for him to walk away. I don't know how that affects Trump's. Trump has no pardon, as far as we know, has no pardon that we know of. Does that mean that he can still be investigated, even though Roger Stone may not be? That's possible still, right? And then Roger Stone would testify.
Everybody can be investigated. Yeah, everybody can be investigated.
Can be indicted.
Roger Stone is being investigated. Let's just,
Yes.
And I would think they would make him go through all of the stuff and argue the validity of the pardon right to the last minute. Right. And at least bankrupt him, right? And as for Barr, my thinking on that is that as much as we don't like him and our disdain for him is well documented, his MO the entire time was his whole unitary, what is it, the unitary executive theory, and the president can do this and the president can do that. I think maybe he even knew it drew the line at insurrection. Like that doesn't really have anything to do with unitary theory, right? Or whatever the hell it's called. Like that is even if you're trying to come at it from a legal standpoint, however batshit your legal justification is, there is no legal justification for what happened on January 6th, period.
Right.
And he was probably all
right. Or Donald could have just been, because he was angry at Barr, he could have just been his foul self that he is, Noel, and Barr was like, I'm out. This guy's saying stuff.
Trump had certainly soured on Barr. We all know that, because Barr wasn't shutting down like the recounts and things like that. But I think, and I remember tweeting the day I heard he was quitting, I think he got wind of what the plan was. And I think even for Bill Barr, the guy who had Epstein murdered and the guy who got the dudes who did El Mazote acquitted. El Mazote was a massacre where you guys know what happened in El Salvador, and we were catching babies on American bayonets and stuff. That wasn't a bridge too far for Bill Barr. He got Elliot Abrams and all those guys off. I think when he got wind of what Trump was doing, and I think Trump probably called him up and said, "Hey, Billy, we're going to need some pardons, pre-written up for these guys after we succeed." I think Barr was like, "I'm out of here. This is too hanky for me. I'm going to go back and be my Opus Dei self somewhere and get a, university, provost position or something." But even Bill Barr was like, "No, dude, this is nuts."
Although you're absolutely right, LB, he should be holed up in front of Congress and he should be asked these questions. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be. So it would be interesting to see if they do that. Let's move on to another distasteful person in some people's minds. Piers Morgan. You guys know who Piers Morgan is, right? He did a CNN thing when Larry King went off CNN. He did the hour at 9 p.m. on CNN. And then he went back to Britain, where he's now the host of their morning show. And he got into a big fight this week with Meghan Markle, the princess. And you've got all the scoop on that, Noel.
Yeah, well, you left out Piers' the apex of his career, which was he was on Celebrity Apprentice, and he was on
of course.
the first season, and he won. He was the winner, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
And what I remember is he hated Omarosa, and I was his escort, and he hated Omarosa with a fierceness and a passion that was like, it was something to behold. I remember standing in the hallway at SNL at 8H and being like, "Dude, you're taking this too far." Because he was like foaming at the mouth, like, "I freaking hate her," spittle coming out of his mouth.
Wow.
And it's how he bonded with Trump too, because that sort of like resentment, like he was nurturing that resentment, and I think it was more than just who she was on the show. I think it had to do with she was a black woman. She's also was a very attractive woman. So in hindsight, maybe he tried to hit on her or something and she rebuffed him, because his vitriol to her didn't match the crime. You know what I mean? It was like, this is a game show, dude.
Although let's face it, Omarosa is pretty distasteful. I mean, just her acts. I mean,
Omarosa?
Yeah. She's not someone you would admire in any way. I mean, personally.
Of course not. But what I'm trying to get at, and it was also edited that way. They edited the show to make her such a villain. Like,
is reality TV not real? Oh, no.
Sorry to break it to you. She didn't deserve the kind of single-minded hatred that he seemed to have towards her. Her role was the heavy on the show. It wasn't like he came across as a nice guy. There's
an interesting parallel there, because he doesn't seem to like Meghan Markle very much either.
That's my point.
And after Oprah's interview this week, it was quite interesting to see them react on British television. He had to quit his job. So he goes on TV the next day after the Oprah interview and says, "I don't believe Meghan. She lies about things. I don't believe what she's saying." He does it in a much more intense way than I was saying it there. But nevertheless, he gets a lot of complaints. And then the next day, he gets fired off his show after he was confronted by his co-host. So he's without a show because some people would say that he can't criticize the interview, which is a bit disappointing, because there's a lot to criticize about that interview, even though Meghan Markle clearly has a case.
Is that to me?
Anybody? Anybody?
I didn't watch the interview, so I'll sit it out.
Neither did I.
Okay.
Yeah,
I did.
Okay.
I watched it. I
Let's
admit
go.
it. I turned into a girl and watched the interview because
Hey, I
I tend not
watched
to
it.
watch that. I know. I tend not to watch those sort of palace intrigue things because literal palace. I don't care, but I do like how Oprah interviews people. I was like, I want to. She's so good at interviewing. Zev, you could talk about this a lot.
Yeah, I have.
But you really can. But here's the thing. This woman, regardless of whatever the stories and people's point sides, and is she being authentic, and blah, blah, she was really clear about the distress that she was under and that she was suicidal. And she was clear about it and what was causing her to be in that place. We got to have Greg. Okay, Greg, you got to mute next time. You got to mute next time, Greg. So
I did.
Oh, no, it didn't work. So,
sorry.
For him to come back on the next day, they do have regulation and rules over there that are much stronger than what we have here. And he broke them, right? There were all these complaints coming in because he went for her jugular. And, if somebody's saying, look, I was suicidal, I was this distressed, I was going to cause harm to myself because of this, at least follow the regulations and the rules next time you're on the air with that particular circumstance. And so that was my feeling about him. Good, he's gone because he was horrible, right? And nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves for someone to intentionally continue because they can't stop it, like he couldn't control himself, or because he had an agenda. Who knows? But he went even harder on her than he ever had gone before, and he was the worst one in the press against her. With this woman saying, "I'm going to hurt myself if you keep doing this."
Yeah, right? It's hard to defend what they did to her, especially in the press. It was just unfair. I've worked with him a little bit. I've done a few shows with Piers. He's a good guy most of the time. I mean, I thought he was really easy to work with, considering you'd expect this kind of bombastic personality to work, to walk you through the door. Noel, did you find him easy to work with? Was he pleasant?
He wasn't that pleasant, not to contradict you, but he was pretty arrogant, and he was single-mindedly pissed at Omarosa when I worked with him. And I worked with him for a finale, for an evening as we're standing in the hallway. And he's like, basically, I don't care what happens as long as she doesn't win. I hate her, And he interviewed a friend of mine, Chelsea Handler, and she shared the clip this week. She was a guest on his show on CNN, and he was horrible to her. He started reading his notes when she was speaking, and she called him on his BS. She said, look, you got to pay attention to me. You're not even listening to me. And he goes, well, you're a boring guest. And she goes, it doesn't matter if I'm a boring guest. You invited me on the show. Your job is to act interested, And he that's the gig. We all know that, right? But he doesn't like to be criticized. And when he walked off set in London, it was because the other weatherman gave a very impassioned monologue about how unfair it was that what Piers had done and how he personally attacked this woman that he tried to date, that rebuffed him, that we haven't mentioned, that they had gone on a date, and then she wanted nothing to do with him. So, there was personal, invective in what he did against her. And when he was called on it, on live television, he couldn't handle it, and he walked off.
I know, the walking off was pretty spectacular. I hadn't seen anything. I've worked in morning television a lot of the time in my career, and I can tell you that kind of tension is very evident in most of these morning shows. It's too early in the morning for people to be really happy, so they're faking it. Most of the time, they're just, cranky. And I think what we watched was a very typical morning show assassination of a co-host. When they want to climb the ladder, and they're like, "Oh, I have got you now," and I think that's basically what my read of the entire thing was. And it may be true because he no longer is working there. So let's say goodbye to him because he's not actually that interesting. And what should we talk about next? Does anyone care about Sharon Osbourne? Not really. Sharon Osbourne? Let's move on.
Narativ is funded by viewers like you. Support our independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative.